welcome back to TIDES. I'm Shveta Malhan, managing partner and co-founder of Yenza 3, where we help HR and business leaders ride the wave of AI-driven transformation so that they can adapt, adopt, and thrive. Today, I want to ask you a provocative question. Are you still introducing yourself as HR, or are you stepping into your power as a true business leader? Because in an era where AI is rewiring how we work, HR has two options: stay in the background or step up and become the catalyst for the real business transformation. So how do we actually make that leap? Why is it so urgent? And what can we do right now to make sure we are not left behind? To help us tackle these questions, I'm thrilled to bring on Sachi Kittur. She is a strategic superstar who's helped companies scale by 8 to 10 times, advised CEOs on talent strategies that drive revenue, and even built tech ventures that fuse people and data. Trust me, she's not just predicting the future of HR, she's busy creating it. Sachi, welcome to TIDES.
Thank you so much. Wow, what a great introduction. I hope I live up to the expectations. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on the show. I can't wait to dive into this conversation with you. So let's kick off with the idea of reframing how HR sees itself and how it's perceived by others in the organization. So I know you've lived and breathed this transformation in your own career. So when did you first realize that HR needed to be positioned as a strategic business function rather than an administrative support role?
Yeah, I think there were two things that happened. So one is there were, from my CEO, my ELT, there were things being asked of me that I could not do because I didn't have the information about the business, right? I didn't know enough about the business. And so that created some risk. And that was a bit of a light bulb moment where I realized, okay, I need to go out there and understand not only our business model, not only from a sort of a P&L business acumen, financial acumen, but also functionally spend more time with all the leaders, so that I had more confidence in executing in the asks that were coming my way. And the second point I'd say is when the pace of change started to accelerate. I feel like in tech, maybe late 90s, early 2000, and when the pace of change was faster than sort of the operational activities and events, and when we had to keep changing things to adapt, I realized that I need to be able to predict and forecast and understand. And the only way I can do that is really inserting myself into the business.
Yeah. And you make a really good point. Like the pace of change in last decade was definitely big when it came to transformation, but what we are going through now is unprecedented. So it's like a turning point for so many of us in HR professionals. Yes. Yet sometimes we remain stuck in that administrative support mindset. Yes. So from your perspective, having worked with HR teams in high growth and startup environments, why is this why are we stuck in this mindset? What do you see as a big mental hurdle holding us back as HR leaders?
I think my view is being an HR leader is very isolating. We carry the burden of our employees emotionally to thrive. We have to meet the needs of the business. We have to work within budgets. So I think the number one step for us to kind of get better at sort of having the influence in the business is going out to a community and connecting with other leaders to really tap into what's working, what's not. Mm-hmm. And I think that sense of community can really make a difference. I also think that, listen, we're a cost center. We're often not given the information, as I shared earlier, lack of support. And I think that really erodes the mental grit. And so I think we have to strengthen that mental grit, that mental muscle to be able to really take on those hurdles and be really, and persevere in terms of our ability to influence. And quite often I hear a lot of HR leaders, sometimes they just don't ask. You just need to ask to be at the table. Listen, I have an idea. Can I come present something to the ELT? Find an advocate, an ambassador in your ELT who can maybe support you. So there's a lot of creative ways you can really assert yourself more into the business so that that ability to influence and have a voice increases.
Such a great point. And in fact, in one of our conversations, you you helped me understand how, in your lived experiences as HR leader, you, instead of calling yourself as an HR leader, you call yourself as a business leader specializing in HR. Can you talk to me more about that?
That's been my mantra for a while. Sometimes it trips people up, and because, we're so used to, when people ask you, what do you do? Oh, I work in HR. And so I think that was something that I did for myself to remind myself in the early stages of my career that my skills are more than just HR, right? I understand the business. I understand the function. I understand sort of the leadership and the employee dynamics, so that it's multifaceted. And I think it really started for me on a personal level. And then and I realized that in the HR community, this sort of reframe needed to happen, especially for those of us that have worked in transformational businesses that feel like we've had an impact on, on the bottom line in many, many ways, because that's how every function gets measured. And so I think being a business leader who specializes in HR is absolutely the right reframe for many, many of us HR leaders. And I'm hoping I can lead the pack.
Yeah, I actually love this reframing because it helps us get closer to where the action is happening, which is in the business, and we can solve for the needs that are emerging in the business. So, so if we have to paint a little bit more deeper picture for our listeners around business leaders specializing in HR, how would we define that role in practical terms?
Yep. So in practical terms, I think it's a couple of things. So first and foremost, I think you can't just start calling yourself that without having, without being able to showcase that you've got those capabilities. So if you're an HR leader today, take some time to improve your business acumen, understanding numbers in the business. I have pinged my CFO. I have pinged my sales and marketing leader many times and said, just walk me through what you do. Help me understand. And I think if that is as a prerequisite, if you can get there, then what it really means is you come to the table and you contribute in areas of the business outside of just HR. And I've been doing that for many, many years. And I think the lens from a people culture perspective, I think, really gets that diverse 360 view on business problems when you're solving them at the table. So having a view that outside of those goalposts of people, culture, HR.
So I'll zoom it, do a deeper dive with you on the business speak or business language in a second. But I wanted to do a little bit of, like a little bit more broad exploratory conversation with you on AI and how AI is reshaping the way businesses operate and why HR has to be front and center in these shifts. So you are a technology leader as well. You've seen firsthand how AI can affect not just HR processes, but core business decisions. So broadly speaking, how do you see AI impacting core business functions beyond HR, and why is that a cue for HR to step up? And this ties to our previous conversation.
Totally. It really does. I think, listen, AI is moving so quickly. I think its impact on the business, we're all making assumptions with limited data in front of us, because the true impact will unfold given the pace at which things are changing in AI capabilities. So I think we have to look at, if I'm an HR leader today with the introduction of AI, I need to understand which roles and functions can bring efficiencies by leveraging AI? So that's question number one. So you need to have conversations with all your leaders. You need to lead those conversations. Once you figure that out, you need to then look at sort of the upskilling opportunities for the people that are impacted. What are some other areas and ways in which, we can upskill, we can support so that that optimization, the value is, really continues. And so it's almost like moving around the puzzle pieces a little bit. AI's come into play. Now we just need to move some of the pieces around. And then I think ultimately, not getting too carried away with the fact that AI is going to replace human, because we're hearing it all the time. I just spoke to a founder yesterday in a founder group circle that we were discussing. He said that he brought in AI to replace customer service. Mm-hmm. And within 3 months, basically removed AI and reintroduced the human, realizing that the human judgment, the human service capability, human to human conversation cannot be replaced by AI. And so he said that I learned the hard way, that it was actually not the right tool and the right role. So I think we're going to see a lot of that, a lot of companies thinking, oh yeah, we can do this with AI. And probably reverting back, maybe not to exactly how they were pre-AI, but somewhere in the middle where the human element is still foundational.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to help business determine where, when, and how to integrate AI into their fabric or DNA of the organization, how can HR support that decision making? I'll give you an example, which I've used
that
many
would be
times.
Great. Yeah.
So let's say, for example, with AI agents in the mix, tomorrow, you and I are not shopping, but our agents shop on our behalf.
Yeah.
That fundamentally changes who the marketing team is set up in a company to support. The customer is no longer just human. The customer is maybe human and their AI agent.
I know, scary.
It totally is. But then there's the impact of this shift in consumer behavior on how the purpose of marketing function, what is the anatomy of the marketing function, how it supports the business. So in this kind of a scenario, I've spoken to other HR leaders as well, like, will marketing think about HR, bringing HR on early? And if they do, how should HR show up? Because should we be just thinking about reskilling people, or are there deeper, broader impacts of this change on people who live within that function?
Oh yeah, it's so complicated, isn't it? I think if I'm in HR today, first of all, do not wait for those conversations to start.
Yeah.
Go, look at this as a learning opportunity to actually be ahead of the curve and know what's happening. What are the trends? I mean, now with ChatGPT, you can virtually pick any topic and really become, well-versed in that topic very quickly, with the relevant content, et cetera, to review. So I'd say, one, do not wait for your company to be coming to you or start talking about AI. Go out there and get the information. And the second thing is, I'd say, or any role that can be commoditized without overthinking about you gave a marketing example. There's some complexities there. Anything that can be commoditized and that's repetitive, such as, maybe even like a help desk function, customer service. This is a low hanging fruit where AI can seamlessly kind of add value and offer support in terms of efficiencies. Mm-hmm. So I'd say maybe start to think about that layer of skill and function and start having casual conversations with the leaders in those organizations. For me, my secret sauce was always on one-on-one relationships, mm-hmm. and planting the seed very early on so that, by the time things percolated and they become relevant to the business as a whole, I've already had some of those conversations. So that's kind of right off the bat. That's what I'm thinking. You get ahead. Don't wait for your organization. Become a subject matter expert to the best of your ability. We're not technical. So we're not going to start talking about, back end, sort of architecture on AI and LLMs, but, make it your business to know what the landscape is and how it's going to impact the business.
Yeah, which is such a great point, Sachi, because when we are in the business, talking to the business leaders early on, we are also planting the seeds on what are the potential impacts. Like if Shweta was sitting in marketing team and suddenly with
Yes.
AI integration, 50% of my workload is now
Yeah.
done through AI. What's the impact of on me? Like, are you giving me 50% pay cut? Now, is
Yeah.
my salary going to reduce or are you
Yeah.
going to move me in other parts of the business?
Yeah.
How would you as HR team make those decisions? Because I think this is another angle that I want to learn from your perspective. Is HR ready to support the business with those decisions? Do they have
Yeah.
information about me at individual level to say, because it is going to impact people at individual level? How are we going to support their transition and movement in the organization at individual level?
Oh, it's such a tricky question, Shweta. I think I don't have the answer because there's so many unknowns, but I can tell you a methodology that I use all the time, which I think may come into play here, which is based on where the business is growing. If we can, can the leaders look 12 months ahead, 24 months ahead to the best of their ability and anticipate what skills and roles are we going to need at that point that we do not have in the business today. And if we can, even if it's not accurate, it's 60, 70%, we've got a sense. Then once you know that, you can reverse engineer the skills that you need and take those employees and upskill them against that sort of blueprint that you've created in terms of the skills for the future. So it's a bit of an art, not a science, but I think you get the idea of the framework in terms of how you can start to think ahead versus just being sort of, oh, we don't need this role, or there's an AI component and 50%. So you have to kind of, you have to get organized and start thinking ahead would be my, yeah.
Absolutely. Which is, again, such a great way to look at it because now HR is close to the business, anticipating where the business is going, and it also helps HR teams look at their own capability. Do are we set up correctly? Do we have the anatomy to serve the business? Like even making that decision that you said about preparing the workforce for future skills.
Yeah.
Do I have enough skills landscape information about the people in my workforce to plan in advance?
No, totally. And there's so many. So in order to do that well, there's almost like an audit that has to be done in order to set yourself up to succeed against that framework. So I know, so tricky.
Yep. Yep. So HR, it's like HR can't just we in HR can't sit passively and support AI related changes. We need to actively guide them because it's not just because AI is not impacting just the business, it's also impacting us in HR. So,
Yeah.
for HR leaders who are new to AI but are ready to jump in, what early steps should they think about taking to ensure that their initiatives align with the overall business strategy instead of just automating existing tasks
Yeah.
within the HR function?
Yeah. So I'm reading a lot about sort of the employee sort of unrest and angst that's now simmering in cultures because of AI, because of the unknowns. And I always go back to basics. The basics are communicate, collaborate, be transparent in real time. And so if it was me and I'm a leader and I'm thinking to introduce AI into my team, it's kind of, I can see so many efficiencies. I would actually, before I make any decisions or I'd bring my team into a room and I'd start that conversation and the ideation and the brainstorming and inclusivity. And I think not only are you going to get buy-in from your team by including them early on, but you're probably going to get better ideas on how to execute against the AI. So leverage your team. I find a lot of employees on the side are doing all sorts of cool things, and they've got knowledge and insights. And so it's on us as leaders to tap into that.
Such a good point. Like it's not a top-down approach that's going to work.
And nothing is anymore, not in today's culture building. It doesn't matter what change, whether it's AI, whether it's introducing a new org structure, it doesn't really matter. The principle and the approach is exactly the same. You have to communicate, you have to be transparent, you have to include everybody, because we all want to belong. We all want to know where we're being included in decisions, and it can really make such a big difference in terms of the employee's ability to really embrace that change, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now switching gear, let's talk about one of the biggest challenges that I hear from HR leaders, and which ties to our earlier conversation about showing up as a business leader specializing in HR. Um, so the challenge that I hear is, how do I speak executive and show real ROI? And you've counseled CEOs, CFOs, CIOs,
Yeah.
and you know exactly which business metrics or what matters most to them, and make their ears perk up. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, in people and culture, it's really hard to get black and white because there's so many things that are ambiguous and hard to measure. And I think at the end of the day, what is our job? Our job is to have the right skills, the right people in the right roles at the right time. And that is ultimately what our function is. So in order to achieve that, you have to build some kind of metrics around your measurement and your ability to actually do that. And one of the metrics that I try to emphasize, and again, going back to basics, is that what is the real cost? If we are going out to market and hiring great talent, what is the real cost to the business if that person decides within the first sort of 12 to 24 months, if they decide to leave, the impact on the organization is quite significant. And so trying to really help your leaders understand the value of not only bringing in great talent, but retaining them, because that's a big part of what HR in terms of culture building is really involves. Once we get employees through the door, what's that employee experience like? What's that stickiness like? And I think the cost of that really, there's a number there, and the number is usually anywhere from 2 to 4x salary is. So I think drilling down on that, I think then everything else now, all your decision making that's rooted in retention, engagement, stickiness, growth, development, it becomes so much easier as you start to, so that would be one number. And then I'd say the other one is, the other thing that I'm starting to now really measure is leadership impact. So when we do reviews with employees and employees are giving feedback on the leaders, I'm trying to create a metric around the impact of our leaders and whether they're actually, great leaders for the business. And so you have to kind of, I'd say outside of the traditional cost per hire and attrition rate and, time to fill, like there's so many, what I'd say traditional, I think you have to think outside the box and come up with metrics that can help support your strategic sort of views and programming, and really getting a voice at the table.
Absolutely. And I would say that this is where AI and the tech landscape that we have in HR plays to our advantage.
100%. 100%. I think as HR, that's the other thing. We get so bogged down, we're always firefighting. We're always in firefighting mode. I'd say, the tech companies actually got it right. The Google and the Microsofts of the world always had their tech team, their employees, mostly tech, 80% core function, 20% learning. And so I would challenge HR leaders to actually embrace that in their day-to-day roles and prioritize a certain time to actually go out there and learn and find out what's happening, because I know the challenge. We don't have time. We're too busy, nonstop firefighting. No one day is the same, as any HR leader will tell you.
Yeah. So maybe that's where HR leaders need to start thinking about embedding AI into our own functions. What are those black and white tasks that we can automate or give to AI so that we free up our time for that strategic play with the business?
Yeah, big time. 100%, 100%. So good.
All right. So, okay. So let's widen our lens and talk about scale. because
Yeah.
you've been integral to helping companies grow 8 to 10 times their original revenue, which is fantastic. And that doesn't happen without aligning talent, culture, and technology in a strategic way.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us more about how that happens and how AI influences that trifecta in today's time?
Yeah. It's interesting. So I have, in the spirit of transparency, I have not leveraged AI in that transformation yet. But I think it's like anything right now. You have to be agile and do things in a way that offer flexibility to pivot, to iterate. I'll give you a perfect example. We just signed up for a new HRS tool, and we're not signing up for 2-3 year agreements anymore. 1 year agreement. We locked in some rates for 3 years, but so I think so if you start thinking like that about the function, I think kind of readying the organization, not only the organization structure, but the skills that you bring on your team, making sure you've got more generalists. I'm noticing that the specialist sort of hiring is creating some limitations. So, building a team around you with more generalist skills so that they can, work through the ebbs and flows in terms of the needs of the business. So, and then I think with AI, I think it's really, if it was me, I would go on, I would network and find out someone who's in HR who's leveraging AI really, really well. And I'd actually pick up hop on a Google and have a call with them through my network, find out someone who's actually doing it well, because I know I'm not right now, admittedly. And sort of go out there and get someone to maybe support you and help you who's been there. Because for us to do the research, learn it ourselves, it's inefficient, right? We already know the time crunch issues. So you got to almost hack it a little bit. So I know I've got a few people in mind already that I know are definitely ahead of the curve on that. So
I'm really curious about, you mentioned a really good point that if HR is busy, they don't have time, and they have to manage day to day and keep the lights on while preparing for the tsunami that's coming our way.
I know. Yeah.
And we don't have capacity. Are you sensing that HR executives are open and willing to look beyond their internal teams to get support, or are we still at early stages to think about solving it on our own, or parking it aside saying it's not my problem yet?
It's a really great question, Shweta. You've got me thinking about it. I think I'd say it's multi-pronged. So I don't think it's any of those solutions are mutually exclusive. I think because this is all new, we don't know what we don't know. I think I'd go at it from a bunch of different approaches. So internally, trying to understand if there's anybody internally that can support me. That's why relationship building internally, I think I mentioned earlier, that one-on-one relationship building, nurturing a sort of a relationship of learning and sharing. I think you go back to that network, your ambassadors internally, and you ask them for advice and see how can I get some support? So that's one thing. I think one thing I can tell you, I've noticed a big shift in 10 years, the HR community. There's so many amazing communities out there, people group. I've got some Slack channels as well. People are willing to share. They really are. So put your question and challenge out there. And I can almost guarantee someone's going to help accelerate you getting to that solution. So, and then, as far as it become, with our own internal teams, I would say, go out there and advocate for learning opportunities and upskilling your own team. Maybe we need to upskill our team before we worry about other teams. Like this is what I haven't thought about this much, but now that you mentioned it, I kind of feel like we're always prioritizing everybody else's development, everybody else's progress. And maybe there's an opportunity here for us to now say, okay, we're going to prioritize upskilling ourselves. And then that's going to arm us with the ability to do it better for other people.
So true, so true. And I think we live in an age where we don't have to always think about enrolling into a formal course or a program, especially when it comes to AI, which is changing so significantly by the minute, by the hour. This is where something that has worked for me, and I would love to hear your point of view on this, is that we should go look at, to coming back to your reframing around showing up as a
Yeah.
business leader specializing in HR,
Yeah.
go and find problems in the business where we can leverage AI to solve for, to show quick impact. So that way, not only do we learn, we, of course, we have to build strong ties and partnership
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
tech teams internally, maybe
Yeah.
IT.
Yeah.
But an example I'll give you is that for one of our clients, they came to us saying that a professional services organization, that talent discovery is a huge challenge for us. Every time we
Yeah.
go pitch to a client, I can only see talent through the lens of the org chart, and it doesn't give me a fulsome picture to enable my decision to select the right pitch team. And that pitch team could look different every single time depending on the client work that we are doing.
Totally.
So we partnered with the IT team and built an internal talent marketplace. Of course, it's not like AI, but 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 then what we built was fit for purpose. Talent discovery was an
So
issue.
such a great example. I love that. I love that. And I wouldn't have even thought of sort of being that bold, but look, you've given a use case, a perfect use case of where you were able to take that and come up with a out of the box solution. So
That's right. And
love it.
and it's not like we have to fear technology, because we don't have to be technology experts,
You
to your
do
point.
not. You
We
do
just have
not.
to bring a business problem, frame it in a way, and then get the right stakeholders at the table to help
Yes.
co-create and solve.
Yes, absolutely. I love that example, Shweta. Thank you. I'm going to take it's a little note. I'm making like a little note here too. I'm like, okay, that's a really good one. Because it is. And the problem that you stated is a real problem, even in non-services companies. So,
Yeah. So another thing that I hear HR leaders talk about very often is the little bit of a fear, which is valid, that if we start integrating too much AI into our mix, whether it's on the business side or on HR side, we lose the human touch. So
yes.
I mean, the technology and the landscape in which we are operating is changing so fast.
Yeah.
So what would be, your perspective on how we strike that right balance between
Yeah.
innovating with AI and human-led leadership, and we don't lose that human element?
Yeah. I think if it was me right now, I think my view on AI and integrating AI into the workplace is simple. I think you have to start small and
Mhm.
pilot. Everyone's business is different. Everyone's needs are different. So taking a specific function and rolling it up into AI in company A may work, and in company B, it may not work. So that's one thing you pilot. And I think you always have to have human oversight and judgment no matter what. So the minute you start to deviate from that and assume that everything can now be end to end. So I think those goalposts have to be really, really clear up front. And I would bring data for that. Like I'd do a little bit of research and really showcase why it's important to approach it this way. Maybe work with my CTO or tech teams and share some thoughts on that. But yeah, I think, and then you have to pilot on a small, sort of minimum viable effort, see how that goes, learn from it, and then iterate in a more sequential way.
Beautiful. I love the point about data that you also made in this, that I'd like to zoom into quickly. That again, HR has the power now to collect,
We
connect, and
do.
correlate data.
We do. It's unbelievable. I know it's a game changer. I think it's going to be a game changer for us.
Totally, totally. And I mean, with AI in the mix, it changes the game.
Yeah.
AI can do the heavy lifting around basic reporting, and we can start
Yeah.
looking
We
at
can do
drawing.
meaningful work. We can do meaningful work for a change. Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
So humans are still at the center of innovation,
Yes.
and you've seen massive growth in companies.
Yeah.
So what are the core cultural and talent strategies that keep the momentum strong through those big leaps? Because again, we are going to evolve, organizations are going to evolve, and I was just curious to know, how do we keep the momentum for innovation going? Because we alluded to the fact that there's fear associated with this change and transformation as well. How do we diffuse that? Do you have?
My answer may surprise you because it is so simple, and yet so few companies actually get it right. And I'd say there is no such thing. So there's really two elements to this. There's no such thing as over communicating, in my opinion. Employees will rarely ever complain and say, "Oh my God, my company shares too much information and I'm in the know." And there's, I don't want to know that much. So I think the communication cadence, anytime there's change, has to be consistent. And it has to be consistent across all the layers in the organization, from your CEO to your ELT to your mid-level manager. Everybody has to be saying the same thing. Like you can't. So I'd say that has to be really well orchestrated. And then the second piece is really inviting your teams to the table to share ideas. It's kind of what I said earlier. It's not top down. It's inclusive. It's collaborative. One of my favorite things to do in one of my former company roles was like, we'd sit there and we'd have a problem. We couldn't solve it. And I'd say, guys, look at your teams. Is there anybody on your team right now that you think may have the ability? And all of a sudden we'd have 3 or 4 names on the table and be like, okay, leader, in marketing, you go talk to this person because their name came up. And all of a sudden now we've got this little group that's going to help us solve a problem. So I think it's that type of, just using that as an example, that type of thinking and I think if you can balance these two, change, I can almost guarantee that the impact on talent and culture will be less. Significantly less. And that stability that we're looking for will prevail. So
a couple of things I would like to add to those points that you mentioned, which are so relevant, so strong points that we should be paying attention to, are tying it back to leadership impact that you talked about earlier.
100%.
This is the time when leaders can be vulnerable, can show how they are leveraging using AI in their day-to-day lives. Even if it's wrong, that's okay. Fear of failure, if we can diffuse that goes a long way.
It's true. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think as leaders, we need to show up and let our teams know that we don't know it all. And so we're also leveraging all these things. And then we're going to give you permission too, depending on the roles. So so important. So important.
And another thing that I would like to add to your point about understanding the employees as users, we can borrow from our marketing team's playbook, upskill ourselves in user research. That gives us really good, powerful data, to your earlier point, to have those conversations and communicate effectively to who's impacted. So at least we'll have visibility into who's impacted, when, where, and how, and we can tailor our messaging accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. Like internally, there's so many, I think sometimes HR, like whenever we do, just as an example, whenever we do employment branding, we always, in my people culture world, I always have a partnership project with marketing, right? And so internally, there's just so many skills that you can tag team on. And again, just building a relationship, not when you need something, building those relationships earlier, knowing that you're going to need support, knowing that. And I think that can really help.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We are in our final segment. Sachi.
Okay, thank you. Okay, wow, that was fast. That was really fast.
I still have a few questions.
Oh my gosh, okay. I think I've already talked too much, Shveta.
Oh, there's so much. I'm learning so much from you through this interaction. I can keep this conversation going for another hour.
Thank you. I am too. Thank you.
All right. So because AI is not stopping, AI puts pressure on the business, the way the businesses are structured, how they operate, everything is going to be impacted in many ways. And I want to arm our listeners with some concrete next steps. And if there is an HR leader listening and wants to kickstart this entire transformation journey tomorrow, where they have to transform their HR department so that they are ready to support the transformation in the business, where should they start? How should they think about this? from a preparation point of view?
Yeah, from a prep standpoint, I'd say two things. The first would be, before you start talking about something, make sure you understand it, right?
Mhm.
So internally as a PNC team, I would really focus some time on a learning. Maybe there's some modules, some webinars. There's just so much great information out there. I would, as a team together, not individually, individual learning, as a team together, go through some upskilling and understanding around the impact of AI in HR. So really make sure you're armed with the latest and greatest. There's so much content out there. And then once you have that, I would say start having conversations with the functions where you predict AI is going to come in first, right? So if it's going to be likely, I'd say sales and marketing, definitely anything customer facing. And so start engaging in some conversations, and maybe you're bringing in little nuggets of information you've shared. Maybe there's a business case of a company, similar size, similar industry that embraced AI. So, start to have that conversation organically.
Mhm.
And I think once everybody wraps their head around what they need to do, hopefully you're going to be top of mind because you've already started to have those conversations early on.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. So let's wrap up with a future forward perspective.
Okay, let's do
Um,
it. Let's do it.
Where is HR headed in, let's say, I won't even go 5 years. The speed of change is extremely fast. But let's say next 1 to 3 years, where is HR headed, especially as AI continues to evolve? And what should leaders do now to be prepared?
Yeah, geez, I wish I had a crystal ball in front of me right now. I don't know the answer, but based on everything we've talked about already, I think our challenge is going to be the role. If I hire a person today,
Mhm.
the role that they're coming into is going to look drastically different in 12 months. It's not going to be the same job description. I can guarantee that.
Mhm.
So knowing this is very new to us, we're used to having an inventory of job descriptions, predictability, KPIs. How do we measure their success? So now our challenge is going to be knowing that that is the new dynamic. What shifts do we need to make around the people culture as it relates to employee development, performance measurement? How are we going to do that, knowing that this is constantly shifting? So to me, I think this is our biggest challenge: is how are we going to measure success when the job description is a moving target? That's what I
Yeah.
think. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is such an interesting challenge for us as HR professionals, where now we need to think of us as a business to support the evolving needs in
Yeah.
the business.
Fantastic reframe. I like that. We have to almost wear a little mini P&L
Yep.
operation of our own. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Well, and that's a wrap for this episode of Tides.
Thank
You, Sachi,
you
for sharing your game-changing insights.
much. Thank you for inviting me. I learned a ton, and I just want to say thank you for being so progressive and bringing these topics that really are top of mind right now and starting a conversation around them. I think it's a really important thing for us to all engage in, and you're kind of taking the lead here. So thank you for doing that.
All right. And audience, if you love this episode, hit subscribe, drop a review, or share it with your network. Let's keep pushing the conversation forward because the future of work is happening now.